This is Dan Simon at Seven Stories, and I'm talking to Russell Banks, author of a book that we're so excited about, Dreaming Up America, which is coming out in June. And Russell, thanks for taking the time to sit and answer some questions about the book that I think is going to be of interest to your readers. Hear you talking about it, that is.
Well, Dan, it's always a pleasure to talk with you about anything. Let's talk about my book, then.
Thank you. Okay, so, we're doing this ahead of publication. So some of the people, hopefully a lot of the people that are going to listen to this or read it won't have had a chance to read the book yet. So could you just, by way of introduction, give us something of the I know it's not a novel, but I'll still say the storyline of Dreaming Up America?
Yes, storyline. Well, the storyline, I suppose, is the storyline of American history. But there's a parallel storyline running alongside it, and that's the story of American mythology and how we imagine ourselves and have imagined ourselves throughout the centuries, and the contrast and the similarities and differences between the two are really, I think, what I'm talking about in this book. And I think, a point should be made up front that it is, in a sense, a meditative monologue more than a written text, in as much as it began as what was supposed to have been what was a transcript of about 10 hours or 12 hours of my responding to questions put to me by a French documentary filmmaker about American history as viewed through American films and American history as I understood it. Then it was edited down into a transcript into a book that was published in France, and now we're publishing it in the original English, as it were.
So in a way, it's a history of the idea of America. Is that fair?
Well, it's in a way an examination of several ideas of America.
Mm-hmm,
There's the idea of America that we have inherited, or that we've passed along, rather, to our children and each other, that comes from what we've been taught in schools, and then the America that we've perceived through films and television and the various media. And then there's the America as it is when one looks at it closely and critically and examines it in contrast to that inherited perspective.
And you say in the book, since I have read it, that the idea of America, the identity that we all have as Americans, it kind of parallels the real history of the country, doesn't it? In that there were these four threads that get woven together. Is that accurate, or?
I'm not sure I'm following, because,
in other words, there was the New England.
Well, the way I'm thinking about the subject matter in the book is really based on an assumption that we take our identity as a people from certain ideas about our history, and that shapes our experience of ourselves and our experience and understanding of other people who are not American. And that idea of America is a conflicted one. It's conflicted in its essence, and it's conflicted in how it's expressed. And so, therefore, our identity as a people is conflicted and in many ways confused. And that much of our behavior as a people, as a nation, and even as a community, locally and even in families, is shaped by that, or I should say misshapen by that.
Now, you've always in the past chosen to organize your ideas and your emotions on the page as fiction, and this is the first time This is your first nonfiction work. It's the first time that you've chosen to present to your readers and to all of us.
Yeah, it's a wholly different kind of enterprise for me. And normally I have been and think of myself as a storyteller. And in this case, this is not really storytelling. This is reflection and analysis. It has taken me in a more explicit way towards political and historical ideas that I know underlie my fiction. My fiction is not about history or politics, but it has an underlying substructure that's informed by my ideas and attitudes and temperament regarding politics and history. This is an explicit attempt to articulate some of those ideas and attitudes in a very, not so narrow, but in a very specific context.
And of course, as a reader and as your editor and publisher here, one of the joys, for me, is that among nonfiction texts, because you are usually in the role of storyteller, this does have almost a narrative thread. It feels like storytelling. For a nonfiction book, it's unusually, compelling in the way of a storytelling text.
Yeah, I think that's just probably
can't help yourself
of my innate and irrepressible need to put things in a story form.
Right. Which is
unavoidable, I guess, in many ways. It probably makes me not a particularly useful philosopher or useful literary critic or even a sociologist. But I hope that what happens is that by personalizing and constructing this story of American history in a more or less narrative format and in a conversational tone, that it's more accessible and maybe comes to the reader in a more informal and friendly fashion than the usual nonfiction text about this subject.
Yes, all that, and one does have the feeling that we are being told in reading this book, we are hearing truths that we haven't heard before, at least not in this way. Now, to step away from the book for a moment, what do you want to say about it? Now, you and I are speaking, it is March 26th, 2008, several months after the text was completed, probably a year or more since it was begun, as you say, in that taped conversation, a filmed conversation. But speaking now just of today, March 26, 2008, it feels to me that this is as edgy a moment for America and for myself as an American as I've ever seen in my lifetime.
Yeah.
And I just want to ask you, what time is it in America right now, would you say?
Yeah, no, this is a crossroads, this period, and I think that the book addresses some of the questions that we're as a people are addressing or trying to address or being asked to address too by the candidates and by the issues that are facing us directly, whether it's in Iraq or whether it's economic or human rights or all the other issues which are right in front of us. What is happening is we're at a place where we can choose what kind of a people, what kind of a nation we want to be. America is very, almost peculiar, but not quite, in the world, in as much as we're capable of shaping our own destiny and capable of creating and then turning into policy our own identity. Probably only Israel on this planet is as much an invented country as we are.